Good afternoon. I'm Steve Weinberg. I'm the author of this a book, Above Quota Sales Management, that just came out at the end of April. And if you like this podcast and are interested, I hope you would check it out on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. Phil has asked me to tell you the best advice I've ever received and the worst advice. The uh, the best advice that I received actually a couple years ago was to remove negative people from my life. And I had some relatives and some longtime friends, 40-year friends, that were always negative, and I found they were bringing me down all the time. And after speaking with them, I was in a bad mood, and sometimes I think it affected my performance. So once I made the really difficult decision to remove these people from my life permanently, my life just got better. I was happier all the time, and I wasn't hearing all the reasons why the world was out to get every one of them and me. So that was the best advice. The worst advice I ever received was I started out as an accountant, and I think I was a pretty good accountant. I became a CPA, and then when I was given the opportunity to move into sales, a lot of people said to me, Steve, you're not really a sales guy. You're just not one of those types. You're not like a slick guy, like a used car salesman or a life insurance salesman. So why would you even think about doing that? But I was really in love with the product that I was using because I was a customer. And I thought, well, this is going to be real easy to sell. So I made the leap into sales. And, I never looked back. I was very, very happy.
So somebody actually told you that because you're not slick, you can't be a sales guy, huh, Steve?
Absolutely.
Huh.
Absolutely. And then when I first went into sales, I went into one of these shared offices where there were a lot of people from different companies that were there. And there were some sales guys there that I used to listen to on the phone. And oh my God, I thought, I can't ever be like them because I heard them lying to them and making promises they couldn't keep. And I mean, I heard one guy after the person he was dealing with died. He called the guy, and he was told by that guy that they had lost. He called the guy's boss up and told him that that guy that had died had promised him the sale. And
Wow.
I, yeah, and I heard that, and I thought, oh my God, I could never do that. That
No,
just that's
that's not sales.
that's not sales. That's trickery. So I never was like that. I was always as straightforward and as honest as I could possibly be, and I always looked out for the prospect's best interest. And I think it worked well for them, and it worked well for me.
Absolutely. Well, that leads into the first thing that I want to talk about, and that is the introversion piece of that. Because I don't know that I would say you're introverted or extroverted. I think you're kind of a little bit of both.
I'm
So,
well, if you know the Myers Briggs, I'm an ESTP, so I'm an
oh,
extrovert. So and I'm pretty classical. If you read the explanation of that, it really fits me. So I love meeting with people. I'm very spontaneous. I like making decisions quickly, and I much rather enjoy being with people than being by myself. And
uh,
my wife is the exact opposite. She's just fine sitting and reading a book and being by herself. So, and she's very happy. One of the questions that I faced early in my sales management career was that, can introverts succeed in sales? Because again, given some of the advice I was given, you have to, pat people on the back and smile and, have a shoe shine and everything else. Can an introvert do this? And it's actually a pretty difficult question. When you look at some of the qualities that the best salespeople have, and there are a lot of people that have models that measure you against that. An introvert would not normally do well against those models. But what I found was in the right circumstances, and that's important, in the right circumstances, an introvert can do actually an exceptional job in sales. Now, what are the right, circumstances? Well, it would be ones where they use their knowledge. So if they can, a lot of introverts are very smart people, and if the sales position requires them to educate or answer a lot of technical questions or help a prospect out to solve a problem, many introverts excel at that. And they're not pushy salespeople. They won't, they may need some help in closing skills from their manager. But in terms of building trust and building relationships, they will actually outperform a lot of the extroverts in those areas where they can use their knowledge.
And do you think that's even more true now that a lot of the messaging is done via email, where they can be more deliberate and more knowledgeable, if you will, and show that in their writing?
Well, I think selling right now is much more difficult than it ever has been in my mind. And I think a lot of that is some of it is due to the pandemic and the ability of meeting with people. Some of it's due to the fact that the current generation is more computer literate and they're smarter, I think, and they limit access to you. So an introvert may have some difficulty if they can't display their knowledge, if they have no opportunity to do that. They might get frustrated by that. So a text or a Zoom meeting may not go as well as if they had the opportunity to meet in person and they could see how smart this person really was. Like in my last position, I worked with this guy named Eric. Eric was brilliant, but he was socially challenged. But he was a very high introvert. But I don't think anybody in the world today knows more about anti-money laundering than Eric. I mean, so if anybody asked him a question, he could answer that question thoroughly and impress them with his knowledge. And he would not try to pull anything over on them. But I think it's much more difficult in today's environment where you have limited access to the buyer.
Yeah, I agree.
It changed from 10 years ago, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't care about a free lunch like they used to. They would take a meeting. I know that, people would take it. Okay, sure. Let's meet over lunch. It's just lunch. We'll spend an hour together. And if I like you, maybe one day we'll do business together. And that's a lot harder today, for sure.
Right. I could call somebody up and say, how about if I meet you at your office next week? And they look at me and they go, I don't go into the office.
Right.
Okay. So, I work virtually from home. Well, what are you going to do? That kind of thing. We can have a Zoom meeting. Well, Zoom meetings, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say are a 5 or a 6. An in-person meeting is a 9 or a 10 in terms of, looking people in the eye, discussing things with them, reading their body language, having the opportunity to just shake their hands, meet them, meet their boss, see the circumstances, see the company, go on a plant tour. I love plant tours. I mean, any salesperson that doesn't go on a plant tour when given the opportunity to do so should be put in a penalty box. That's a real no-no. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people given that opportunity and they go, no, I'm too busy for that. And I would just go crazy. I go, what do you mean you're too busy? You're too busy to learn their business, what they're proud of, what they like, what they don't like, how they manufacture, what problems they have, what are they dealing with? I mean, I learned an awful lot on plant tours.
Yeah, if you ask questions on a plant tour, you learn more than you ever could from a website.
Right, exactly.
So that's so introverts can sell. So do we have to train them differently, or how do we manage them, Steve?
Well, they need, their sales manager needs to understand that they won't operate the same as an extrovert. So they're not, if the sales manager says, hey, Nancy, you've got to go in there and do a hard close on them this week and get that order this week. The introvert's not going to do that. They're very uncomfortable and they probably will be inept at doing that, and it probably will backfire. So they'll probably walk in there and say, my manager wants me to get the deal this week. And then the prospect says, I don't care what your manager wants. So, I mean, that's, that kind of thing. So they have to be managed differently. And, what I would do is I would ask them if I could help them. So I'd say to them, Nancy, could I go out with you this week on your call? And then when I'm there, while Nancy's in the room, I would say to the, to the person that's leading on the prospect side, is there anything I can do to help get this deal done this week? And then, then Nancy's fine. She's not put at, in a bad way. She's comfortable with the situation. I'm the bad guy, I guess you could say. And they still maintain their relationship.
Yeah. Well, that leads to the next point, right? About relationships. I think that I want to talk about the relationship, not just with the buyer, but with the manager. We have to think about that, right? As a sales leader, we have to really think about those relationships. So how important is that relationship between the manager and the salesperson?
It's extremely important, and it's something that I learned over time that needed a lot of work on my part. So initially, again, coming from the accounting world, I was very process driven, and I tried to treat all salespeople the same. I thought, well, that's the best way to be. I'm going to be fair and equal, and I'm going to try to work with everybody the same. Well, it doesn't work that way because nobody is the same, you know. And even the high performers I found were very, very different from each other. And some people love to have contact with their managers. Some people never wanted to see their manager ever. So some welcomed help, some welcomed criticism, some didn't want anything to do with criticism. So so you have to find what way works best with each one of them. And working with an introvert can be it can work out. I found the most challenging people to work with were the ones that I called the cowboys. And the cowboys could be girls or boys. But those people didn't want any management. They were generally high performers. They normally brought in 150% of what everybody else did. I mean, they were, and they were extremely active. They never took time off. I mean, they wouldn't take vacations or anything. But these people, they would shirk management. They didn't want anything to do with management. So again, you have to find the comfort zone with everybody and then work with them as best you can. Being a sports fan, I guess I learned a lot by watching baseball, football managers and seeing that, sometimes the superstars had to be coddled a little bit. And even though it wasn't fair to the rest of the team for them to fly first class on their own plane or whatever, sometimes you have to allow that if what you're getting in return more than compensates for it.
So you believe that a cowboy can, even though you don't necessarily manage them, still someone you want in your team because they can perform? Or are they going to take the rest of the team down? What do you think?
Well, they do both. They do both. And my experience is they usually get worse over time. So when they first start acting up, and when I say acting up, what I mean is they stop following rules. They don't go to sales meetings. They don't pay attention to emails. They don't complete their CRM. They don't fill it in or anything like that. So that's it. The first things, they want to assert their independence and they want to do what they want to do. And they want to show everybody that they can do that. They'll brag to the other salespeople. They'll say, what are you doing now? Well, I'm working on filling out my CRM. And they go, oh, well, I don't do that. It's a waste of time. I'm busy closing. So that's how they initially will start out with you, and they'll test you. But they'll always be productive. They'll always be bringing in sales, and they may even be the top salesperson in the company. But over time, and they also cause a lot of stress with other parts of the company, other organizations, such as the legal organization, the pre-sales people, the purchasing people, the CRM people, because they abuse they abuse their relationships with them by not following rules. Like if there was a rule that you had to do things at certain times, they wouldn't do that. Or if you had to fill out a form in order to get this or that, they wouldn't do that. So, or they might, agree to a term in a contract that the legal department says, no, you can't do that. And then the contract comes in that way, and the legal department, as well as the manager, has to deal with it and figure out what you're going to do. So at some point in time, I say there's an equation in the book. And the equation is, has this person reached the point where the amount of time that the manager spends doing damage control and the morale hit to the team and the rest of the company, when that overcomes what the benefit is of their sales, then it's time for them to go. And it hurts. It really hurts because you're getting rid of a strong performer. But the reality is at some point that you'll have addition through subtraction. The rest of the team's performance will go up. The rest of the team's morale will go up. Your sales for that year will go down until you get a replacement in and trained. But it's something, you just have to do it. It's at some point. Now you hope that you can work with that person and explain to them what they're doing and the trouble that they're causing you. And I'd say that worked for me maybe 30 or 40% of the time. But the majority of the time is that you're going to be on a path that's going to be to replacement. So once you're there, the sales manager needs to start interviewing other people and understand that this is not going to work.
That makes sense. Yeah, the risk reward and all of that is so important.
Right.
So
right.
important.
And it hurts. I mean, it hurts to get rid of somebody. If your quota is $1 million a year and they're coming in with $2 million a year, and the next highest person is at 900 or $1.1 million, I mean, that's a big hit. Yeah. Now, another thing that these people can do, if you can channel it, is to pass on some of their skills to other people. What they are doing right, because they are doing things right. If they weren't doing some things or the majority of things right, they wouldn't be closing so much business. And they usually have a very strong work ethic. Yeah. So, I mean, these are not lazy people.
Not at all.
Yeah, they just create a lot of chaos in the company is what they do. So if you can remove a lot of that, and I remember with one, I was spending, I don't know, an hour or more a day with my manager, always apologizing for these people and then running out and apologizing to the legal department and to other departments for all the, what they did. So it just, at some point you got to say, all right, as a manager, I have to develop a lot of, I have to spend a lot of time with a lot of different people. And if this is consuming too much of my time, it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, that's really tough. Well, with that, let's talk about how that impacts the team mentally. Mental health is a big thing. I mean, we really have to be aware of that. You devote a whole section to the hidden mental health needs of our team. When we've got a cowboy on the team, a lot of times that can demoralize and just completely evaporate the trust of the team. So how do we start even understanding the mental needs of our team?
I think, sales is a high stress position. Even the best salespeople in the best circumstances, I mean, in an ideal situation, are under a lot of stress. And some people can handle stress better than other people. Now, I encountered a suicide, and that really got to me. A young lady who I thought the world of, very smart, and she just couldn't take it anymore and killed herself. She stepped in front of a metro train in Chicago. And it just blew me away. And I have been a member of the board of directors of the Mental Health Association of Greater Chicago, and our focus is on preventing teen suicide. But what I saw in the sales world was that a lot of salespeople just couldn't handle the stress, and a lot of them ended up being divorced. Some of them ended up being bankrupt, even though many of them were high earners. They were also high spenders. They couldn't manage their money. They would buy the most expensive cars they could buy, and then they got into a lot of debt. I would see people. I had one guy that had to move into a daily motel, and he was earning about $250,000 a year. So I mean, he couldn't manage it. But the stress can be unbelievable. And as I say, as managers, we typically have not gone into people's personal lives. We've kind of left them alone. And that's pretty much the way I was. I figured if someone had some problem at home, it was really none of my business. But then I saw that companies implemented different programs for drugs and alcohol use. And I had one, again, I had another high performer in Chicago who disappeared for about 6 months because he was, under the influence of drugs. His father was a policeman in the city, and we couldn't find him. We couldn't find this guy. We finally asked his father to track him down for us, and we got him into a drug program, a drug therapy program, and it helped, straighten him out. But so as managers, we can't fix mental problems, but we can try to recognize when they're there and point people to the resources that are available to them. Because a lot of companies have EAP, employee assistance plans or programs, and there are also a lot of social services that are available. I've had some military veterans that have had PTSD, very bad situation, very, very bad. And what are you going to do? These people are good people that served our country, and they just have a stressful situation that gets triggered once in a while, and we need to figure out ways to deal with it. And companies, I think, are trying to do their best to address mental health needs. I would say that wasn't the case 10 or 15 years ago or longer.
Yeah, I agree. I think most organizations, they want to at least open up the conversation, even though if they're not equipped to fix the problem, they're at least equipped to point to resources, to have some things there, even for top salespeople. It's interesting because before it was a mark of, oh, I'm strong and I don't have to get any help. And now I think it's quite the opposite. Now the strongest recognize they need the help, and it's better for them if they actually get the help, because they can they can achieve more and get back on track faster if they can get some help. Was that what you found as well, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, the conversation totally changed, I don't know, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, because before that, if you found out somebody was into drugs or alcohol or they were beating their wife or whatever, right away you would fire them in. You'd call them in, and they had about 15 seconds to clean out their desk and they were gone. Okay, regardless of what, if the person had been with the company 30 years or not, didn't make any difference. Now, employees, if someone is honest with the company and says, look, I have a problem and I want to fix it, I would say 98% of the companies will work with them. They will do it now. They recognize that it's in the employee's best interest and the company's best interest to try to fix that. And a lot of these are fixable.
Yeah. That's a wonderful thing. So that's great with that. So let's close this down here and let's talk about our keys for effective leadership, like you do in the book, which is fantastic, by the way. Friends, if you're listening and you're like, ooh, I really like what Steve's saying, get yourself a copy of Above Quota Sales Management. It's a great book, lots of great insight in there. So let's talk about those keys, though, Steve, because I think it's so important that as leaders, we know what's expected of us and how we can be a great leader. But a lot of times we're the only one just like us in the organization. So what should we do? How do we get started on those keys? What are they?
Well, one of the things that I found that worked best was, sales. A lot of sales managers were former salespeople, and salespeople like to close deals. I loved closing deals. I mean, I got a real high by closing deals. I mean, I would rather, seriously, I mean, that was like the best part of any day, is if I could close a deal. So when I had to allocate my time as a manager, what I generally would do, like a duck going to water, is I would find people that were working on closing deals and migrate to these people and try to help them. And that's because number one is what I like to do. And number two was that I was very good at it. So why would I not want to do this? Well, what I found out was that that's really suboptimal. And, we do need to help people close deals. But I found that sales managers, sales leaders need to spend more time on one-on-one coaching with their salespeople. And that is where the productivity can increase the most. So, working with the performers, the high performers, low performers, and actually going out on calls with them, meeting with them. I found that the best use of my time actually was after a sales call, going to Starbucks or a coffee shop and spending a very informal, non-threatening, because not in your office, okay? Just sipping coffee or whatever, having a donut at Dunkin' Donuts, and just saying, okay, let's revisit this call that we were just on, okay? What did you think you did right? What did you think you did wrong? What did you feel the response was? If you could do the call over, what would you do differently? And having this discussion, and again, very non-threatening way, I found that was the best use of my time as a sales manager, and it worked best with salespeople. I found even the cowboys responded to that. So they recognized, by the way, these people were really good at evaluating themselves. So they knew when something went wrong on a call that they did. They knew before anybody else did. So when I said to them, well, Nancy, what did you do? What did you think? Oh, I shouldn't have said this, right? When they asked me about this, I should have done this. I should have told them about this new offering that we had, and they recognized that right away. And I go, okay, so on your next time like that, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to make sure I do this, this, and this, and they remember that, and they're good. And so I think, again, the sales leader needs to spend time offering their coaching to the salespeople and finding out what their needs are, what they think they need to do to get better. If it's a skill that the sales leader can't provide, let's say somebody says, I really think I need better presentation skills. So, and maybe the sales leader doesn't feel that they can help them there. So they can get them help with different presentation skill outside help, maybe. Maybe it's Dale Carnegie. Maybe it's, another consultant that they can go see. A lot of times it's, I'm trying to think of the networking group that meets.
BNI?
Sorry?
BNI?
No, it's one they meet and they give sales pitches to each other all the time.
Oh, like a Toastmasters or something.
Toastmasters, that's the one I was thinking of. I went to Toastmasters meetings. I thought they were wonderful, absolutely wonderful, because someone would get up and talk about something, and then the audience would critique them and say, well, this is what you did good, this is what you did bad, and it was a great way to develop skills. Well, these are things that sometimes the sales leader can't do. So the sales leader needs to also know what their skill set is. So if their skill set is, like I mentioned before, I thought mine was maybe deal management. So, I thought I was an adequate presenter, but I thought, maybe other people may have been better. So we need to find out what salespeople need and get it for them, whether it's mental health, as I mentioned earlier, or sales skills or closing skills, or even, and a lot of times it's technical knowledge. They'll say, well, I need more information about the products in the company, because, when I joined my last company, they gave me 1 day of product debriefs on the first or second day I was there, and I didn't remember anything the week after that. So I had to go back and relearn a lot of this and go to the product managers and the product developers and say, now, explain to me again, please, how does this work, and why does this work, and why was it designed this way? So a lot of times those refreshers are very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you said something there that's really important, and that is self-awareness as a leader. Understanding what you're good at and what you're not, and where you can help and where you can't, and being willing to do that. That goes a long, long way towards being successful, and a long way towards your team trusting you as well.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's all about trust, right? Sales is all about trust, building trust with prospects and building trust with your team. So if and the salespeople, these people, they can tell pretty early on whether you're helping them or hurting them. And if you're not helping them, they don't really want to have anything to do with you. Then they view you as someone that eats up their time with little benefit. So they'll try to stay away from you. So you want to create a situation where they want your help, and they seek it, and that'll only happen if they trust you and they believe that you're out to help them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, friends, if you've enjoyed what you heard from Steve, I encourage you, get a copy of Above Quota Sales Management. It's a fantastic book. Lots more tips and techniques so that you can get the best out of your team. Steve, this has been great. Thank you so much for all the insight you shared today.
You're welcome, Phil. It's been great to talk to you.